Okay, so welcome to Advanced Query Writing Part 3. So, in this part series, I'm basically going to break down advanced queries, thought process, how to go through them, so that hopefully when you start writing more advanced queries, that it's a lot more easier and a lot more natural for you to actually write them. So the query is not going to be as complicated as the next part, but it's still going to be pretty long. And then part 2 and 3 are going to be really similar, but they're going to be a lot more complicated. And so just going through it 1, 2 times, it's just going to be really helpful, and it's just going to help you break it down help break down queries for you. So let's say I wanted to count, okay, all of the ayahs, words, and letters in the Quran, or a given surah. Okay? So, first we need to think of a good title, and I think ayah, word, and letter counts is a good enough title, right? Ayah, word, and letter counts, because, it's just, the title's telling us, hey, it's counts that has to do with ayah, words, and letters, right? But, it doesn't really give us much more information after that, because that is what the description is for. Remember, description is key because it helps the user actually know, hey, what is this query doing? Title, okay, it counts about the ayah, word, and letters. I want to know about how many times an ayah appeared. I want to know the count for that. But what are you actually counting? How are you counting it by? So this is what the description is for. And so you can say this query will find the number of, it will, well, not find the number. This query will count the number of ayahs, words, and letters in the Quran. Okay, so we're gonna count the number of ayahs, words, and letters in the Quran. And this seems a little too basic for us right now. Entire Quran, that seems a little bit too simple. Let's just do or a given surah. And this description actually tells us a part of the query. How can this description tell us a part of the query? Well, we said or a given surah. Now, when we say or a given surah, that means we're talking about a parameter, which means we're going to be dealing with a parameter, and the parameter is going to ask for a surah. So we know that the user is going to input a surah, right? And if they don't input a surah, then it's just going to give us the count for the entire Quran. So that's a big key part of the query that we've just been able to figure out because of our description alone, right? If you make a good title, and if you figure out what you want your query to do, and you can put it down in the description, it can actually help you with writing your query because you can actually learn a bit about your query and the parts that you're going to need in it. So again, description is key, title is key, description so important. It can even help us writing the query, right? It can make our job a little easier. Okay, so now we're gonna count the number of ayahs, words, and letters. But how do I know what I'm counting is an ayah? And how do I know what I'm counting was the word count? And how do I know what I was counting is the letter count? Well, there's a simple way to remedy that. We can just name a column something. Or we can put a name inside of a column. For example, we can do number of ayahs, right, as item, right? So we're going to create a new column called item, and underneath that, the name number of ayahs is going to be there. So we know that the number right next to it, the column right next to it, is going to display information that has to do with the number of ayahs. So how are we going to count it? Well, the best way to count in SQL is just count all. We're just going to count everything and see how many times it shows up, right? We're going to count all, and we're going to do as count. So what does this select statement do? What does this select statement tell us? So it tells us that, hey, there's going to be two columns. There's going to be one column called item. There's going to be another column called count. Underneath item, the name is going to be number of ayahs. Underneath count is actually going to show us the number of ayahs that was counted in the database. Great. Perfect. We know what our first two columns does. We know what information is supposed to display. Now, where are we getting all of our information from? Well, we can get all of our information from the ayahs table. The ayahs table actually holds all the information we need to complete this, to count all the ayahs in the Quran. Okay, so from ayahs, now we said that we are going to count everything, right? And so we've already counted every single thing inside the Quran, right? But if we want to filter down information to just a given surah, like we said we will, using a parameter, then we need to use the where clause, because the where clause is perfect for filtering down information. Okay? So we're filtering down the information, all right? And so we want to do it by the surah, right? By the surah that we're given. And so the database sees everything in numbers, all right? And I think this is important to understand before we start actually writing and using the parameters. The database sees everything in numbers, all right? So when I say go to Surah Al-Baqarah, the database sees it as, oh, go to Surah serial number 2, all right? It sees it in numbers, right? Oh, go to serial number 2. Oh, go to Surah serial number 57. Go to Surah serial number 114, all right? It's just easier for the database and to traverse that this way, okay? It's easier to traverse this way because, it's much easier than actually giving a name to everything, right? We traverse via name, but they traverse via, what is it called? Numbers, all right? So if we want to use a parameter, right, we need to filter it by the number that the database sees, right? Not by the name that we see. So that being said, we want to navigate via the surah, so we know that we need to use the surah serial number, as again, it sees everything in numbers. The surah serial number is equal to, and now we need our parameter, surah number. Remember, a parameter is basically placeholder information saying, hey, something is going to go here, right? Something is going to go here, and the user is going to put that information. Or, and now we're going to add an or clause, or surah number is equal to 0. Okay, so we know what this half does. We're saying, hey, where the surah serial number is equal to blank, right? So our user is going to input a surah serial number, right? But what's this or part? We haven't really done this or part, and I think this or part is really important and really key. What this or part does, it's saying, hey, if you, the user, does not put anything, then the parameter is going to default to the value of 0. Alright? And when it says that the parameter defaults to the value 0, 0 in the database means the entire Quran. It means all. It means the entire Quran. So, and this is exactly what our query said it's going to do. We said it's going to count the number of ayahs, words, and letters in the Quran or a given surah. So, we also use the word or here. So you said, okay, a given surah or the entire Quran, right? One or the other. This or that. We can't do both. Okay, we have our query. Let's add the parameter, right? Display name, we can just call it surah name. What is a parameter name? Well, it is at surah number. And how do we want our input method? Let's just do a surah drop-down list. Again, like I was saying, we navigate the Quran via the name of surahs. So if we just have a drop-down list that has the names, right, then that's just so much easier for us on the user end, right? And how the database sees it, if I click on the name Surah Al-Fatiha, it's actually seeing it, oh, you want to go to Surah serial number 1, it's going to put the number 1 over here. Oh, ayah a.surah serial number is where a.surah serial number is 1. So it's going to give us all the ayahs that are under Surah serial number 1, and it's going to count all of that, okay? So let's add this parameter. Let's save this query, and now let's run this. So if we go to Surah Al-Fatiha, wait a minute. Oh, I see the problem. Okay, so again, when we are calling ayahs, we need to make sure that we put the name that we're going to call it. So, for example, I said a.surah serial number, but I never said, hey, ayahs, I want you to be called a, right? So if I never did a, I would have to call this ayahs because the database would not know where surah serial number is coming from. So I need to rename it A, so I can actually put A over here. That was an error, common error, just make sure that, so if you see something like that, just try to make sure if you abbreviated the names of your tables and but forgot to mention that you wanted to do that to your table in the first place. So common error. We fixed the error, we debugged it, we were like, oh wait, we have the word A over here, but we never said I is going to be A over here. Okay, let's run it. Now we can see that the query is working. So remember, we did not put in any sewer name yet, we did not put in any information yet, but it gave us the count 6,236, because as we know, there's 6,236 I's. So again, we made the item column, we made the count column, we are counting this, and we know that this count has to do with the number of items, and surah name, well, it's using the entire Quran. If you go to Surah Al-Fatiha, it counts 7 ayahs. That's correct. If you go to Surah Al-Baqarah, it counts 286 ayahs. That's correct. And if we go all the way down to Surah Al-Nas, it's going to see that there are 6 ayahs. That is correct. Okay, so we know that the number of ayahs part is working. It's counting. We were able to rename the table ayahs into A. You're able to debug it. Perfect. Now, we've done the first part of our query, but there are really 3 parts in the query. We said we want to count ayahs, words, and letters. So now we need to count the words, right? And so what we are going to do, we're actually going to use a statement called union. What does union do? Union, what it does, it basically gets a bunch of select statements, right? And it basically combines them into one table, right? So if I did select everything from surahs and select everything from ayahs, right? And I did union to the two, then what would happen, it would get the ayahs table and the surahs table, and it would just shove them together, basically, right? Surahs table would be all on top. As soon as the surah tables end, union, select all from ayahs, the ayahs table is going to start, but it's just going to appear as one table. That's all it does, okay? And so let's do select. And so we said, hey, we're going to call you number of ayahs, so we know that what we're counting is the ayahs. So let's just do the same thing over here. Let's just do number of words instead of ayahs. Let's just do number of words as item, And so when we do number of words as item, we're basically telling you, hey, there's going to be an item column. I want number of words to be under there. And then if we want to count all of the words, we just do count all as count. Now, what does this select statement tell us? It tells us, hey, there's going to be an item column, there's going to be a count column. We want number of words to go there, and we want the count of the number of words to go right there. Good, perfect. Now what do we do? Well, where are we going to get our information from? That's important. So we know that we are going to get our information from the words table, so we can count the number of words. So from words W, make sure you rename it. But words does not have all the information we need. All right. So we are going to have to use a join clause. Join I as A. And I will explain to you why we need to join to I as A once we get to the where clause. So from words W, join I as A on W dot ayah serial number is equal to A dot ayah serial number. So what did this from statement do? We said, hey, we want words W, we want the table words to join with I as A. We want the tables to join and come together, right? Not like the union statement in which we're just shoving them together so it looks like they're together. We actually want to connect them, right? And if we want to connect two tables, we have to find a common link, right? Think of it like a Venn diagram, right? You have two circles here, but there's a small sliver that intersects, and this is how we can join all the tables, and this is how we can filter information from the ayahs table, which actually affects information in the words table, all right? Join statement, really cool, and it actually, filtering a table in one area is actually going to filter information from the other table, right? Even if it has nothing to do with which they joined on, right? And so when we say on, it basically, the database is asking us, hey, how do we know that they can be connected together? How do we know we're compatible? Well, we can say, hey, words has the column IA serial number, and IAs, and the word IAs has a column IA serial number, so they have that common column. We can join them together. Database is like, oh, they can? Perfect. We can join them. Bam. So why did we join with IAs? Well, words do not have a certain column name. And if you were paying attention, you would notice that we have a parameter, and we still need to filter our words by this parameter, right? So we still need to filter our information. And how does the database see things? It sees everything's in numbers, and we're right now filtering information via the surah. So we need to use the surah serial number. So we need to do a.surah serial number is equal to @surah number, or @surah number is equal to 0. So words does not have the column surah serial number, right? Because surah serial number does not really pertain. Surah serial number is not really important when it comes to words, you know. But we know it's important when it comes to eyes, you know, because we ought to know where the eye came. But the word, it's just a word, you know. So it does not have that column. So we connect it with ayahs so that we can see what serial number it is there. Alright? And so we join the words table, we join the ayahs table, and now if we try to filter the information with the surah serial number, it's actually also going to filter the words via the surah serial number. So like I said, we filter one part of a table that we joined, and then the other part of the table also gets filtered, right? So join is a really powerful tool in which we can filter information from one end and affects information all the way from the other end, right? And then we just have our parameters over here that we did above, and we've already explained what they do, so we don't need to say what they do because we already know what it does, all right? So we have the ayah part. Let's save this. Let's save this. And now let's run the query. And now as we can see, it's telling us, hey, we did not put in a surah yet, so it defaults to the Quran. And it tells us, hey, there's 6,236 ayahs, but there's also 77,433 words in the Quran. That's pretty cool. I did not know that. Would not have known that if it was not for this query. This query allows me to actually count the number of words in the Quran without going through the entire Quran and counting every single word that I find. And if I go to Surah Al-Fatiha, I can learn that there's 29 words. Surah Al-Baqarah, there's 6,117 words. Surah Al-Yunus, there's 1,833 words. So, great, we counted the number of words, so we've done 2/3 of our query. Now we just need to count the number of letters in the Quran. You know, this final select statement is just more of the same thing. But before we do select statement, we actually need to do union. Remember, we need to connect these two columns, these different select statements together. That is why we have the union clause. So we can do select, and let's just do number of letters as item, and then let's just do count all as count. So we know what this select statement does. We're saying, hey, get me the number of letters, and I'm going to call you number of letters, and you're going to be underneath the item. Hey, I want to count everything, and you're going to be under the column count. So great. We have the select statement. Now it's time for the from statement. Where are we getting our information from? So we need to count the letters from letters L, obviously, and we're just going to call it L, but letters does not have all the information we need. Now, what information are we missing? Well, it's the same piece of information that's missing from the words table, all right? We don't have the surah serial number column inside of the letters. And, you know, letters does not actually share a column with ayahs. So how do we remedy that, right? How can we get the surah serial number? Well, let's just do it in a roundabout way. Let's join with words W. Let's join letters with words W on the fact that L.word serial number has the same column as W.word serial number, right? So we're basically saying, hey, letters, where this letter came from, there's a column in letters which tells me in which word this letter was in. And word serial number, well, the word has to know what the serial number the word came from. So we can combine the columns knowing that these are the same, that they share this column. But we're not actually going to use the words table to display information. But we're actually going to use the words table. We're just going to join it with the IS table. ISA, I'm going to join it on the fact that W.is serial number exists and A.is serial number exists. Okay? Bam. So what did we just do? So we said, hey, I want to count everything from the letters table, right? But I also want to join the letters table with the words table. And in both tables, they have a column word serial number. And I want to join the words table with the IS table. And I know that the IS table and the words table both has a column IS serial number. So why did we do all of that? Well, like I said, where the letters table and the words table both does not have the Surah serial number column, and we actually need that if we want to filter our information with our parameter. How do we filter information again? We use the where statement. So we can just do a.surah serial number is equal to @surah number or @surah number is equal to 0. Okay, so what does this where statement do? We already know what it does. We've done it. This is our third time doing the same exact statement. We are just saying, hey, get the serial number. The user is going to input information over here. If they don't put input information, it's going to default to 0 or all. So let's save this query. And now let's run it. Okay. And now it tells us the number of letters in the Quran. And as we can see in the entire Quran, because we've not put input information, it says all. There's 326,159 letters in the Quran. That's a lot of letters. You wouldn't have known that if we did not use the database. So again, really powerful tool, this database. Please use it for any query that you want to do, just so you can learn more about the Quran and the infinite wisdom that's hidden in it. Okay, so we can see in Surah Al-Isra, there's 6,565 letters. That's a cool number. It's 65 repeating. Can that have something to do? Is number 65 important in Surah Al-Isra? Well, you can find out and making your own queries. Okay, so what do we add now? Well, we don't need to add anything. We're actually done with the query, right? We said, hey, we're going to count the number of ayahs, words, and letters in the Quran or a given surah. Well, we counted the number of ayahs, we counted the number of words, and we counted the number of letters, and we can filter it by the surah, right? We can go to any surah, like Surah Al-Duha. We can see, oh, there's 40 words, there's 166 letters, and there's 11 ayahs, right? So yeah, number of words, letters, and Surah Al-Falaq, letters, there's 71 letters, 23 words, and 5 ayahs. Okay, so that's it for this query. And again, so I kind of, let's go back and let's recall how did we tackle this long query, because as you can see, this is really long. Well, we first knew that we wanted to identify that we are talking about ayahs first. So we put it in single quotes, and we made a new column called item, and then we counted everything. We're just going to count everything, right? Because if we count everything that is over there, then it's just going to give us the number of ayahs. And if you do not know what the ayahs table holds and how it holds information, then please go to the documentation, read it, so you will find what all the tables mean, all the columns in the table, all the information that the columns hold, and then maybe this count function will make more sense then. And we also said make a count table. So initially, we only had these two things, okay, done. And then we said, hey, we want to get all of our information from ISA, and then we added the parameter, okay? We ran that, we made the parameter, we ran that, and then we saw it work. Then we added the words. Then we added the word section, then we added the letter section, and we tested it after we added the word section, and we tested it after we added the letter section, right? So break your query into parts, right? this specific query, it had unions, right? So we were able to basically break it into 3 different parts. So try to do that in all your queries whenever you're making a complicated query. If you have a query, a detail query, a parameter, and like a hyperlink column, right? Make a query first. Make the parameter for that query. Test it. Run it. See if it works. Debug it. Then make your detail query. Run it. Test it. See if it works. Add the hyperlink column to your detail query. See if you could actually navigate to that detail query using the hyperlink column. So just break it into parts, and this is what's really going to help you make more complicated queries like this one. And if you go to the home page, and if you go to Quran Wiki, right, and if you go to statistics of the Quran, you will actually see the query that I just broke down over here: ayah, word, and letter counts. And so if you ever want to run this query, then you can go here, or you can rewatch this video, code it yourself, and see how that is. So I can go to ayah, word, and letter counts. I can go to run. I can go to run query. And again, it has the same exact things that we did, right? Break your queries into parts. This is how you're going to be able to make such complicated queries. In programming, it's called procedural decomposition, breaking your problem into parts. Because really, when you think of a query like this, it's really big. It's a lot of work, but if you break it down into these small parts like we did, constantly testing, then it becomes really easy, and it can help you really make some amazing queries. So that's it for part 1. If you want to start writing your own queries, right, and once you are done writing your own queries, watch part 2, in which we cover a much more complicated query. So Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and have fun writing queries.